So essentially, blacksmiths would make everything from iron and steel, and it's called forging. So to forge it, we have to heat up our material in the fire. And that's going to be about 2,000 degrees, 1,800 degrees. So that's going to be a nice bright orange, maybe into a yellow. That's how we can tell the color and the temperature by pulling it out of the fire. We look at this. Obviously, we see the color, which equates for temperature. Okay, so a really bright orange into a yellow, it's going to be about 1,800 to 2,000 degrees. So when we forge it, we bring it to the anvil and we strike it with the hammer. And what that does is it's going to move the steel, and that's where we get the term forging. So a nail would have a pointed end. So there's a pointed end for a nail. And what we do, we have to give it an offset to draw it down for the shank. And I'll do that on the corner. Okay? So we're going to heat this back up. As I'm explaining it to you, it cools off. It cools off really quickly for this small stock. This is a 1/4 inch piece of stock. And if it was a 1 inch piece of stock, it wouldn't cool off quite as rapidly. So the air blast is generated by the blower, which in turn forces the air up through the fire, and that's what makes the fire hot, in turn makes our workpiece hot. So here's our nail. This is the shank here. This will be the head. And of course, this is the point of the nail. So we have this gauge. And this gauge is marked 3/16, meaning I have to draw this down. The shank is 3/16, not the length, but the shank. So this gauge allows me to know if I have reached that by putting it inside here. And it needs to come up tightly to the shoulder. There's a shoulder right here, and it does not quite do that yet. So that tells me I have to draw it down just a little bit more. So I forced it down a little bit farther, and it comes up and it stops at the shoulder. That's the end of the shank. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reheat this, and then I'll score this, and then I'll upset this head, and that'll be the head of the nail. Back to the heat we'll go, and what we're going to do, be really careful not to burn the end of it off. It's so hot that it'll actually melt the material. We don't want to do that. We just want to heat it up. About 1,800 again. Maybe 2,000 degrees. This is the cutter, and that's going to allow me to score this material. Now we're back up the temperature again. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to score this. If I cut it, it's going to shoot across the floor. Okay, there I've scored it. Now I'm going to put it into this header, and then that's going to be the head of the nail. See, there's the head of the nail. Okay, so there's our nail. And that's called upsetting the head. Then these would have been made quite rapidly. They're just thrown down on the floor, and then you go back to the next one. This would be placed in here again, same procedure over and over and over again. So there's our nail making.